And we're live.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Lisa.
Hey, Josh. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great Wednesday.
Absolutely. And Dark Ozarks on Wednesday night. We're back.
Yep. We're actually a couple of minutes early.
I don't know how that. Oh, really? It's been an interesting week. Very positive overall, just in terms of research, and
Yes.
we are continuing our second anniversary. This is like our Shark Week, I guess. I don't know.
Either that or we're jumping the shark. I hope not.
I hope not as well. I suspect we're not, because really we're just taking bits and pieces of our favorite topics, things that we've covered, or places that we have been, especially over the past 2 years, and just having fun exploring them through our conversation and dialogue.
That's right. So come along for the ride, people.
Mm-hmm. And we have some notes, not many.
Very few. But that's okay.
It is. It's usually how we roll. But we also have an amazing sponsor for Dark Ozarks.
Yes, we do. Always buying books.
Always buying books. Not only a great sponsor, but a fantastic resource for us.
Yes. We get a lot of research material there.
Yes.
And we're fortunate because often it's set to the side to say, hey, you might be interested in this. So
which is huge.
It is
really
huge. It really is. And so if you're in the Joplin area coming through, interested in books, stop by on North Main Street to Always Buying Books. Bob and Elise do a wonderful job. And it's one of the largest bookstores in the Midwest. And everything from, paperback sci-fi to very expensive, rare books. So you never know what you're going to find.
Some very rare stuff.
Yes.
I was noting some things that had been posted recently, and I'm going,
yes.
Wow, that is not only rare, that is esoteric. Not something that you're going to be able to pick up new. And yes. Where can folks find them online?
On Facebook, search Always Buying Books. There's also an associated group, Friends of Always Buying Books. So like the page and join the group.
And I'm on there.
I am too.
Also, I mean, a fantastic resource for those of us who live in the region. But right on the historic 66 route, a great location to mark on your journey, your pilgrimage on Old Route 66.
That's right. And that's one thing that they do is often when they get visitors in from far afield, they'll note that and where they were from and so forth. And if they're not shy, include their photo in a post. So
love that. So much history. And of course we're using digital media to bring Dark Ozarks to a wide audience. We've used digital to perpetuate our other aspects of what we do, paranormal science labs, state of the Ozarks. But something that you and I adhere to is collecting books.
Yes. And may end up dying under a fallen bookshelf before it's all over with, but it is an addiction that I don't think is going away. So
no, there's something that I think in each of our respective homes that anybody who comes over is instantly inundated with lots and lots of books. It's a beautiful thing.
lots of books and wide variety about the book houses.
Yes. And the thing that I love, I mean, just beyond just the tactile um, sense of holding books, to me, there's an enormous comfort in having a well-developed library where I know where all the books are, and I know that if I need a particular resource, that I can just go pick it out, and it's not going to change.
Right. Well, and yeah, that is something that if you're just relying on internet sources, you are subject to editing. And
Yes, of course, we do that all the time, just by nature of making updates and things to articles. But there's just something really, to me, very, very almost sacred about going to the words that maybe they were written 10 years ago, maybe they were written 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You can pull that book off the shelf. It's not going to change. It's a beautiful thing. We appreciate our sponsor.
we really do. We really do. And we hope you check them out. So
Mhm.
tonight we are doing sort of a part 2 of our anniversary special, 2 years doing this, and just talking off the cuff with, you know, what we find the most intriguing, etc. Where do you want?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Mm, I'll let you pick. You go first.
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay,
I want you to.
you did go first last week. Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
Spooklights.
Oh, Spooklights are amazing, and of course, at times elusive if you're me,
Yes.
less elusive if they're you, and other folks. There are reasons for this. It's not just that the Spooklights don't like me, although they might not. Um, you've grown up in the region. You've been out to Spooklight Road many, many times.
That's fair. And when we've been there, you were driving, so
I was driving, yeah, and they don't always hang around for a long time.
that's true. And the one that you have chagrins about, it did not stick around long, but everyone
Right.
else there got to see it, the jobs.
Yes, yes,
We
they
like to
did.
tease them about that.
And that's very understandable. The thing that I find particularly interesting about the phenomena is that nearly anyone who, and you don't even, it's really much more predictable than most paranormal phenomena.
In some
and,
ways it is, yeah.
and I'll qualify that in the sense that there are a lot of, say we'll take the, I'll pick on the Crescent Hotel for a moment. We'll talk about more about the Crescent and Eureka Springs. I adore both the city and that particular location, which is made quite famous these days in terms of
Yes.
paranormal circles. And while I feel very comfortable saying that it is haunted, and many other people do as well, there isn't, to me anyway, and correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, but there isn't that bedrock sense or foundational sense of community who have all said, oh, I went to this location, we saw something strange. Then I went to
Yeah.
this location, saw something strange. Went to this location, saw something strange. Generations of folks who have grown up in the Joplin area have experienced the Spooklight really as a rite of passage, as a point to freak yourself out, but in some cases just as a part of being from the region.
Yes, I mean, very common to take the kids out, on a Saturday night, put the kids in the back seat and go out. Teenagers
Almost like
don't
you
go
would,
out in groups, huh?
almost like you could if you're going to a movie or watching a TV show.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty
And
much.
I don't know of a lot of other paranormal phenomena that has that sort of familial sense.
That's true. I mean, I think that's a really good point. And maybe, I don't generally think of it as much as being strange because, as you said, I grew up with it. It was just, it's very natural. Um, and while occasionally someone might say, oh, they get scared or something, generally people are not. Uh,
Mhm.
Although I have some people get startled, if it pops up right in front of them type thing. And I have to admit that, and he is a fan of the page and sometimes listens to the show, so he may be listening. But very old friend of mine, I saw do the tightest 3-point turn in a 70 Chevy truck to get off Spooklight Road I've ever seen, when it literally appeared about 10 feet away from the truck.
And I think that's very fair. Another aspect that I find really fascinating about the Spooklight is, I mean, we've talked about it numerous times. Many people have talked about it. There have been documentaries, there have been books. As of yet, there is no, even amongst paranormal circles, a standardized consensus of what in the world this is.
No. And unlike other topics in the field where you are kind of dealing with fuzzy data, what is a ghost or whatever, and you're talking about people investigating, but not a lot of resources thrown at it. But the Spooklight has actually had a lot of resources and hard science thrown at it by universities, by the Army, the Corps of Engineers, etc. And none of them came up with a satisfactory answer. So,
And this is also something which we've talked about it as something generationally familial and familiar within the tri-state mining district. But there's also a really long-standing documentable history associated with it being cited going back to the 1820s.
yes, yes. There will be a few people who say, "Oh no, it wasn't. But it was. There were documents in the Cherokee tribe files when they got to Oklahoma from the Trail of Tears. Some accounts from soldiers that were accompanying them. And then on, a lot of people will point to, oh, there was a newspaper article in the 1880s, and that's the first time anyone talked about it. No, it wasn't. But even then, even if you look at the 1880s, that still eliminates one of the major arguments that people make, that it's lights from the highway.
And that it's, yes, modern headlights reflecting under specific meteorological conditions.
Mm-hmm. Which certainly does not account for all of the sightings, all the weather conditions, location.
Sometimes broad daylight.
Over a several square mile radius. Someone just commented they'd been to the museum. There used to be at the end of Spooklight Road on State Line Road, there used to be a little building. It's fallen in. The last time I could see any of it, part of the roof was still on the ground. Spooky's Museum, and you could get pop and candy and things like that, and he had different things about the Spooklight, kind of like they do play the little Alien Inn and Roswell and things like that now. And that was there for a long time. A lot of people have very good memories of that as well.
I don't blame them. And it, I like I said, we've discussed so many different facets. Something I find particularly fascinating about the overall area, and we talked a lot about this at the Coleman a couple of weeks ago, is the whole area, essentially a multi-acre area, does seem to have a lot of very unique activity.
And different types of behavior happening there. But then you have the Devil's Promenade with activity there just down the road. You have the Deer Woman legends that literally is on land, again, just 3 or 4 or 5 miles away. Goatman's Hollers just a few miles away. Hoffman's Mansion is just a few miles away. So you have all kinds of things going on in a relatively small area.
Mm-hmm.
And with very little population too.
Yes. And something that you and I had the opportunity to set in on a talk recently at the Metaphysical Fair in Republic. We reported a lot from the Metaphysical Fair, and gained some really fascinating insight into Native American lore, Indian lore, from a variety of standpoints. Something I found interesting, as you said, Deer Woman, is that in many cases, or at least in the case that was referenced at the talk, is that Deer Woman really serves as a cautionary tale for men not to abuse women.
Yes, yes. And I have heard some accounts of the Deer Woman story there being of that it's associated with a homestead where a woman was killed by her husband. Hundreds. I've not been able to empirically document that happened, but in some of the versions I've heard, it's associated with that story. So,
and I, making some comparisons, I think to perhaps the more well-known but phantom, La Llorona, Woman in White.
Yeah.
But I found that really interesting, that the moral of the story is that you'll be safe from the Deer Woman if you are not abusive toward women or girls.
Yes, yes. Well, and that's also, that's also kind of the case with The Conjuring at the Kendrick house, is that it tends to be very protective of women and children, and men who are boisterous and loud and more aggressive are the ones that are the targets.
Yes. Bringing essentially what would be an antagonistic or aggressive energy with them.
Yeah, that potentially threatening to what it's there to protect, is the way I take it.
Yes, and it begins to push back. Something, with that, and this is, well, we may not get into too much into this topic tonight. We may save this for episode 3. But something that I think is so powerful and so important in understanding conjurings, also in terms of understanding hoodoo as a whole, is it really comes down to the perspective.
Yes.
And that is something that I think we as modern Americans really struggle with.
We do, by and large. And you would think in some ways that as we go forward, we would become more comfortable with that, but we've become more insular against it almost.
It's the issue with the conjuring at the Kendrick house, which is, you guys have documented it well. You had experience there. I've had experiences there when it exerted itself, started pushing back at least twice. I'm happy to say it was not pushing back against me. And the idea that when we encounter
character,
I hope so. When, for example, we go into an environment like this and something starts pushing back, certainly something that you see a lot of in pop culture is then to push back against the thing that's pushing. We see that's very much of modern reality TV in our neck of the sphere of this learning environment.
Yeah.
And also in terms that um just, when we're on, when we, and this is more your domain than it is mine, but certainly I'm there for analysis, doing investigation where individuals have had negative experiences, perhaps in their home or their workplace or that sort of thing. And there is almost like, we are our own blind side. We are the one thing we're not taking into account.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my goodness, this dark, forceful, terrible energy is pushing back. Oh, I'm so scared. In the sense that we may be the ones who have triggered it. We may be the ones who have brought a highly antagonistic energy into the space, and it's just responding as only it can.
Exactly. And then we go home, and the people who live there have to deal with
it. It also, I think, brings a unique ripple to hauntings that seem to vary drastically based on the people who are there. So, one family, for example, could just be plagued with incredibly violent activity. They finally throw up their hands and they sell the house and they move away. And then another family buys in. They're like, well, good luck. We're not going to tell you anything. And the other family moves in, and then somebody checks on it 10 years later, and they're like, oh, we love the house. Nothing strange happens.
Yeah, you get that. I mean, and one of the most famous examples of that is the Amityville Horror House. There's various theories as to all of that, but beyond this, but certainly there are a lot of those kind of situations that from one resident to another, it's a different experience. On the other hand, there are places that continually people move out of because the activity gets to them. So,
and
but those
we
are
know
not very common either.
Yeah. But we know of both of those situations, those types of situations we've experienced or been in those places. And I think that I guess, for lack of a better word, the intermittent haunting scenario is one that leaves a lot of people scratching their heads, and it leaves a lot of authorities or skeptics saying, we have all the evidence we need. This family's crazy. They're making stuff up. Nobody else has experienced it.
Right.
If the place was really haunted, somebody else would experience it. Not necessarily.
No, not necessarily. Just like anything else, a lot of different things in life people react to differently. And or just like the old psychological experiment, where you have 100 people in a room and someone walks in with a gun and threatens to shoot and walks out, and then they quiz everybody what happened, and they get 100 different versions. It's that happens, but more than likely, at least one of them was right.
Yes. Yes. And it's something that I think that we managed to do a random test at the Coleman without meaning to. We're all on stage. I think we certainly got the audience's attention without meaning to. We were all sitting on stage. Of course, we're on stage facing the audience. The audience is facing us. And at the beautiful Coleman Theater, there's a lavish balcony. And it's probably mid-afternoon. And we all see something on the balcony. And we all startle independently of each other.
And watch it.
And watch it. And yet, from what I can tell, we all saw something slightly different.
Yes. Yeah, the descriptions were slightly different. And interesting to note that that's the first time that's happened there when we've been there. In fact, Jessica, one of the presenters, she said she was glad to be on the stage because this time she got to see what we saw, because she'd been in the stage in the audience before and watched us react to things in the balcony.
I know, and I'm the first one to, just like being totally open. I very rarely do I see things. We've talked about
Yeah.
this visually. My senses, I think, are slowly attuning in, and it's a very organic process.
Mhm.
Most of the time, my ability to sense things typically comes more from a journalistic standpoint, where I put myself into the environment, and just sort of let myself go, then pull myself back out. And over the next 2 to 5 days, those impressions will start working their way through my admittedly stubborn rationality. That seems to be the process. And it's, the idea that beyond my regular consciousness, my capacity to sense things is there,
Mhm.
but it takes time for the rational barriers to stop blocking what got experienced.
Yeah, well, you have to view it's sort of like a filter in a camera.
Mhm.
Because camera, it takes photos or video either um, throughout the light spectrum, and the filters are in the camera to filter out parts of the light spectrum.
Yeah.
And our mind tends to do that. So you kind of have to train yourself to take the filters out.
Yes. And I think this is an interesting discussion at our 2-year anniversary, so we might as well roll with it. But the idea that the filters of the what I would classify approximately, it's not my field of study, as more of our analytical left brain,
Hmm.
that those filters are there to protect us. What
Hmm.
they that's what they do. They keep us from theoretically doing dumb things. Um, Sometimes it works, but that that those filters, those rationality filters, this is the way the world works, this is how I understand that the world works, these are my expectations, this is what's going on, that these thinking of it as layers of filter
Hmm.
are not consciously placed there.
No, no.
This is not the situation of the a full-bodied apparition showing up in front of you, and then you saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm in super denial about what I just saw." It
Yeah,
We're not talking about a conscious
that's true.
response. We're
Yeah.
we're talking about the fact that there is an unseen environment around us, and
Mhm.
whether, regardless of how you feel about what it is that I just said, there is. I mean, we can scan electromagnetic spectrum and see that there's an unseen environment around us. Um,
That's right. And that's a good example in practice that um, I figured out, and I think Alex probably has too from doing this for so long, is that um, generally people walking around, you're not aware of the EMF field or
mm,
changes in it, because it's not, you don't see it, you don't smell it, etc. It's not on our radar. Um,
yeah.
Doing this long enough and examining EMF fields, I've gotten to where I recognize what higher EMF feels like on my body. Um, and so at this point, I can usually walk into a place and say, oh, the EMF is high before I pull a meter out.
Yes. And that takes practice.
Yeah, and
And
just that associate, I feel like this when this is going on.
yes,
And so, yeah, it's something unless it's we make ourselves aware of it, we don't associate. And that's true of a lot of this.
it is. And something that seems to be very consistently overlooked is that it's I think that there's a bit of a contradiction in terms, but we as the analytical device, we are not a device. We are an organic being and an energetic being within the space.
Hmm.
So we are part of the environment that we are attempting to observe.
Yes, and we can have an effect on the environment directly.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah,
just like what you said earlier, sometimes the activity in a location depends on the people there, and
it
for that
does.
very reason.
It does because we cannot um, put something. We cannot put ourselves into the environment without also altering the environment.
Exactly.
It's
And
so
affecting the other energies there.
yes, and depending on what we're interacting with, um, it might be some sort of impossible to, with the current equipment, a phenomena that we simply cannot detect, although
Right.
we can at times observe. And there's, some interesting analyses on the spooklight that suggest that indeed may be the case.
That, I mean, that's true. And I've had some personal experiences that make me wonder about that.
Hmm.
And I guess another thing that we ought to say in regard to the spook lights is that that's not the only one in the Ozarks. There are the one at Crossett, Arkansas, Gordon, Arkansas, and uh, got a message the other day. Haven't followed up on it yet, but apparently one that's over there by uh, that's over in Texas or Howell County,
Oh wow,
supposedly.
that is cool.
Hmm.
I
I
love that
don't,
space.
and I don't know anything more about it than that at this point, but I hadn't heard that before. So,
Very, very cool. And I think that brings up a couple of notes. One, we love it when we get messages and comments, and please do
yes,
not hesitate to reach out to us. If it's something that you're comfortable with being public, we're totally cool with that. If it's something that you need to keep private but need to talk about, we're totally cool with that too. We respect all of
that's
that.
right.
We love getting to share and connect, and
But that's one of the best things about doing this.
it really is, and learn. Uh, this is we're creating this together. All of us are creating this extraordinary network of connections across the Ozarks and the Ozarks borderlands. And I love that. I love that community aspect of this. I love the destigmatization and the normalization of being able to talk about unique phenomena, even when we really don't understand it. And I love the getting to know people and connecting across our whole region.
I do too. I do too. Um,
2 years and counting, and it just keeps getting better.
it does. It does. You know, I think we can officially say I don't think we're going to run out of stories.
And no, no, absolutely not. There is no limit. Of course, the gamut runs from just dark history, which we love to talk about,
Hmm.
to various types of paranormal incidents and hauntings that range from individuals who observed it and find it interesting to situations in which people really are concerned.
Hmm. And um, it's an amazing journey we're on.
It is, and I think one of the things that I like most. I mean, this is a difficult science. It's a difficult craft or
Mhm.
art, um, because there aren't a lot of There are very few easily definable answers.
That's true. That's true. So, sometimes the answers are a little more esoteric.
They are, or sometimes there's a variety of answers
Mhm.
as possible options. It is one of those areas that it's very common. Again, coming back to more of our highly rational, everything goes in a
Mhm.
cubicle approach, to say
Right.
if we don't have a clear cut answer that we can't define, and we put that on one side, then these people's experience is no longer valid.
Right. And that's not true.
No, it's not. Now, the conclusions surrounding the experience could be varied. It
Mhm.
and sometimes it's a situation where, through historical research or simply more information, or going in and experience, uh, that you can say that while this experience is occurring or has occurred, and that is incredibly valid, it might not be what your conclusion the conclusions around the occurrence might be incorrect.
Right. Very, very true. I mean, that's very true. And you have to be prepared for that.
And sometimes people are like really relieved about that, and sometimes they're really disappointed.
True. You just
It-
do what you have to do, and try to.
and and make the best conclusions possible based on the data at hand, and respect people's structures and beliefs. That said, of course, there's been a lot of, I know there was, again, I mean, we talk about it, sort of, on the side, a lot of quote unquote debunking about the spook light, that for folks who
Yeah.
have experienced it know that that's simply not the case. It's folks who came in from out of town and came up with, if you're not on the ground, if you have not experienced the spook light, if you've not grown up experiencing the spook light, you could be from another corner of the world, watch the show, and walk away saying, well, I learned all that there was to be learned. I know what causes it. It's a natural or meteorological phenomena, and go on. Nothing to see here. Mystery's been solved. Those of us who are on the ground know that is absolutely not the case. The mystery has not been solved.
That's true because basically they take a very paper thin slice of experience and said, "Oh, this covers it." And and I think just the fact that it's such a widely shared experience, you just can't discount that, because it's not a matter of one person saw one thing on a empty road one night, and were they overly tired, were they freaked out because it was 3 a.m. or their car broke down or something. You're talking literally thousands of people over decades.
Yes, yes, and thousands of people with no reason for them to be. You couldn't get this many people to collude with one another in some sort of
No.
conspiracy. And these are all people who are all coming from the same communities.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and but with varied experiences, it's not
Mhm.
like it's not the conspiratorial thing where everyone sees the same thing, or even, you know, um, not to discount UFO accounts, but so many of the UFO accounts are so similar that sometimes you wonder, is it just a matter of mimicking other things that you've seen in pop culture or heard?
Mhm.
Uh, but with this, the firsthand experiences vary very widely.
Mhm.
And so if everyone's making it up to go along with the crowd, they're making up different things.
And with the exception of the now long defunct Spookies with his pop and his candy,
Yeah,
there is no profit motive associated with the spook light.
exactly. Exactly. And 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 that, I mean, be honest, that was really no different than any other hamburger stand or anything else, in a corner
Yes,
somewhere.
it's
He didn't
it's
build the museum and create the spook light. And
no,
people were already going out there. He said, "Hey, I might as well sell some pop and candy while
it
they're
is
out."
it is to me it is such an Ozarkian story, and it is today, even back in the day, largely devoid of that commercialism aspect of any kind, or even pop culture outside of popular regional culture.
That's true. I mean, that is true. It's not something that has been appropriated, really, and hopefully it stays that way. Um,
Mhm.
or that it's the story is told by people here.
Mhm. So and for possible new listeners, new viewers, uh what are some of the common manifestations when the spook light decides to show itself and I'm not around? What I'm gonna go out there and I will see it. It'll be laughing at me. Um or
You need
not.
to go out with Alex and see if you can find what dented the top of the truck.
No doubt. No doubt. What are the common manifestations of the spook light?
More common are just seeing a ball of light. People usually describe it about the size of a basketball. It's internally lit. Um, it it can slightly, change shape, split into two, sometimes three smaller balls, and then come back together. It will sometimes it moves at treetop height. Sometimes it's down along on the ground. Sometimes you see it on the road or out in the fields. Um, Farmers have had it appear in their barns. People have appear around their houses. People who live down there. Um, so it's unpredictable in that regard. It's like you don't know where it's going to pop up. Um, Often it does seem to, once it is close to people, seem to react to their presence, and move in evasive manners. I mean, there's also accounts of it floating through cabins of cars, floating through the windshield and floating through the cabin and out the back. And there's stories of it hovering over, like the hood of a car or whatever. And I've even heard people say that, it blistered the paint on their car, that kind of thing. Um, and not just, recently and everything. I've heard, like people who are, when I was growing up, people who were parents of friends and, grandparents, telling these same stories. Uh, so the same kind of things over a very long period of time. Some of the more unusual occurrences seem to be situations where it is a matter of sometimes it's observable, but not by everybody, or also other things right in the same area that are not the light, shadow men, unexplained sounds, phantom coyotes, um, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is such a unique combination
Mm.
of observable and observed phenomena, um, that as you already noted goes well outside of a lot of expectation.
Yes. Plus, I mean, also incidents that are definitely more unusual where it seems to leave residue or even, uh, or not necessarily the light, but something. And, uh,
Hmm.
s- you know, dented hoods of cars and things like that.
Yes, which
No one can really
we
explain.
we have firsthand accounts,
Yes.
that are very solid. But that type of experience seems to be very unique. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Not very common. And certainly not saying it's the light. I don't know what that
No.
is.
Right.
Again,
But
other
it
things
is
going on there.
it occurred within direct proximity of the location. So
Hmm.
I think that it. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, and I think that's one thing that seems a little different with the Hornet Spooklight by Joplin versus Gurdon and Prosset and the others, is this combination of other kind of activity where the other lights seem to be just the light, that's
Mhm.
I haven't heard the same kind of other stories associated with those locations.
Right, which we just might not have heard of them, but
Right.
it does certainly strike us as a little bit placing the Joplin Spooklight or Hornet Spooklight. It has many names.
It
Um,
does. Tri-state
it is-
spook lights.
yes, and I think we can. Of course, I have been fascinated by Will o' the Wisp lore
Hmm.
since I was probably about 4 or 5 years old,
Yeah.
and there was an Uncle Scrooge comic book, vintage Uncle Scrooge comic book that is to blame for that one. Um, Huey, Dewey, and Louie made friends with a Will o' the Wisp, and then he, you know, pointed the way. But it's Will o' the Wisp lore and phenomena is wrapped around um, typically methane gas pockets
Mm.
and swamps, swamp regions, that sort of thing. We hear about that certainly in Louisiana.
Mm.
Um, Shannon has talked about this at length
Yep.
at the Coleman. Essentially, I'll butcher the French terminology, but essentially the fairy lights, the
Hmm.
the lights of the dead,
Yeah.
um, which in some cases could be considered to be a very positive or benign experience. In some cases, a very malevolent experience. Um, we don't have the swamp. That's the short way to put it.
No, and another corollary with the will-o'-wisps in the old world, where they often were seen in cemeteries, but you would get methane because those that lore goes back to times before embalming, and so as a body decayed and released gases, you would have swamp gas basically, and
Yes.
and so that's one reason that lights would be seen in cemeteries traditionally.
Mhm.
And then, although that doesn't really shouldn't happen anymore with embalming, but
Right. And in most cases it does not.
right.
We just have to be we have to settle for being faked out by the not real thing. When when folks go to the dollar store and get solar powered tea lights and then set them up next to their loved ones' graves and scare the bejeebers out of me. Because I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then I'm like, oh, it was $1.25 at dollar store. So yeah, not that that's ever happened. The
That, that totally fiction.
it's happened. It's happened.
Wind chimes.
Yeah, wind chimes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm assuming the Victorians did not deal with this with their grave decor, but I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there's a post World War II, probably even post Vietnam era thing that you start seeing those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. It's I've only it's only caught me by surprise once, but boy, howdy did it. Uh, it's a will o' the wisp. It really is. Oh no, it's a fiber optic solar powered lighted hummingbird made out of resin.
Do it
Um,
yourself.
yeah, good times. Mm, so I the spooklight is probably the one topic that is most satisfying in the fact that we do not have a satisfying answer. We don't know what it is.
No. And I hope in a lot of ways, I hope we never figure it out. I mean,
Honestly, yeah, it's
the mystery is very comforting, if that makes sense.
I agree. I to me the world is a bigger place when we haven't solved everything. And
It's
the
good
reality is
all of that.
there's a there's a lot that we have not solved.
Yeah,
But we usually remain willfully ignorant of it, or pretend like we've solved it.
true, very true.
We're coming out of a very um, industrialized era of education that has said if we can't define it, it isn't valid. Oh,
Yeah,
look, we've defined everything.
until something else new pops up.
Yes, and I think that that very sterile push, the shying away, um, the decrying of the spiritualist movement, which certainly had its fair share of charlatans.
Mhm.
The the fact that things like folklore and art and metaphysical studies and the esoteric things are simply considered outside the orbit of discussion in so many
Yeah,
cases, that we're seeing the pendulum swing of each recurring new generation who's grown up in this, what I would consider to be a very highly industrialized and sterile community learning environment, that there's just a lot of interest that slowly build up over time, and each new experience, or each person's new experience, especially if they're not looking for it, leads them to say, wow, I think there might be more. We clearly have a long history of ancient civilizations and quote unquote more primitive cultures that did not struggle with this at all.
right. And and to be honest, I think the same analysis applies to other things we talk about in the Dark Ozarks, the dark history and everything. I think that there is uh, has been a mounting interest and desire to hear the history that is left out of the books, the textbooks, um, for the
Yes.
same reasons. And and to be fair, I mean, I guess to be fair, there is only so much that can be covered in a certain amount of time in school with a lot of different subjects and everything. So it's not
Mhm.
necessarily a conspiracy to say, oh, you don't need to learn this. It's just what do we pick and choose? But as a consequence, it leaves the mind, it leaves people curious about what they don't know.
Yes, and that can be very addictive. I'm certainly guilty of
Yeah.
just constantly running down rabbit holes, going, what is it that I don't know? How do I
Yeah.
know if I don't know it? Where can I find more information to find out what it is that I don't know? And that leads to a lot of interesting places, including Herman, Missouri.
Very good. Very nicely done.
Thank you. I've been practicing all week. uh, I want to get back to Herman. Was there in October of 2020. Just an amazing experience. I've been through Herman, Missouri. For people who don't know, you should go.
Yes.
And for people who do know, here's your reminder: you should go. It is beautifully restored. Was a German settlement, and in the beginning of the 1830s, early 1840s, on the Missouri River between Jefferson City, our capital in Missouri, and St. Louis.
Mhm. Go ahead. I was
No, no, you're all good.
I was
Uh,
trying to figure out what our producer was doing.
gotcha. And I'm happy to say I cheated. No, I just grabbed my notebook. I actually do have a few notes. I have our notes from our German episode,
Good.
German culture and lore. But to give people an idea, Herman is the county seat of Gasconade County. We're talking, uh, first of all, just incredibly beautiful river country.
It is.
You and I were there, not very, just last week,
Yeah.
in the immediate region, Owensville, and the by, let's see here, 1837. 1837 is when Herman was first settled. I love this. 17 settlers, German settlers, stepped off the steamboat in December of 1837 into, quote, a howling wilderness.
How it's hard to fathom how intimidating that would really be. I mean,
Mhm. It is. It is. I, we freak out if we're without cell phone reception for 30 minutes.
yeah,
We're talking about stepping into a North American wilderness in the winter with no infrastructure other than the steamboat that is now leaving.
leaving. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And
it's rather daunting when you think about it.
100%. And, such a testament to the German immigrants who created the town of Herman, a testament just to the people who created so much of the infrastructure that we take for granted.
Mhm.
For better, for worse, regardless of how you look at that, these were individuals who, in many cases, gave their lives
Mhm.
to create things that we now take for granted, including the roads we drive on.
Exactly. And it had to happen for us to have the life that we have now. I mean, and I think that's something that people often forget too, is that it's very easy to criticize the past, but uh, most things that happen had to happen for us to have the life that we uh, enjoy now. And even though,
Yes,
even when we cry foul about things in the past, we're very comfortable in our luxury today.
in our luxury today, and that's it's something that I take a lot of pride in, and I think you do as well. We call it Dark Ozarks for a reason. We deal with a lot of noir history. We deal with a lot of difficult themes. Our tagline is sometimes there are no easy answers.
Hmm.
So many of the heroes of our past aren't heroes. They're real people.
Right.
Um, and so many of the villains of the past are also real people.
Exactly. I mean, they
It's
really are. I mean, I put up a post today about Jesse James because the anniversary of his death was a couple of days ago. And, complicated man in a difficult time, and the
Yes,
legacy is complicated as well.
it is. And I think realistically, uh ultimately the same will be said about many of us, in times past, and when, from the future. And
Yeah.
we in each new generation, um we cannot judge ourselves by a future we do not know.
Nor the past
And
by circumstances that we,
that
can't
we're
change.
yes, I mean, for example, we now have been privileged and to have information that we didn't necessarily, or perspectives that we didn't necessarily have,
Hmm.
to go back, quote unquote, in time, and then apply those social mores that we now take for granted, to apply those to people, in some cases even 50 years ago,
Yeah.
but certainly 100 years ago, 200 years ago, to those people living. We somehow think that it's all the same. It's not. These were individuals who had very different backgrounds and experiences, and were confronting challenges that probably would have killed off about 80% of us.
Exactly. Yeah. uh, just circumstances that you know we don't face and we don't conceive of facing, um,
No.
which is why yes, there's a war going on in Europe right now and people are appalled, and that's the reason, is because it is something that is not foreseen, and
Hmm.
particularly in comfort of your home, and uh, we're pretty insulated from those kind of things in America, to be perfectly honest, no matter how bad we think it is.
Yes, yes, and it's one of those things that certainly has pros and cons attached to it, but so many of the things that we're appalled by for us are existential.
Yeah.
It's
Very true, very true. Whereas, 200 years ago, existential dilemma was not really a luxury people could have. They were, it's, do we survive getting off the steamboat?
yes, yes. Do we survive the winter? I think that's the simple idea of the difference between how on earth can I survive my existential crisis, as opposed to, am I going to starve to death before April?
Exactly.
Or freeze to death? And that I think it's such a testimony. 1837, the 17 settlers stepping off the boat at Herman, only there was no Herman to step off to.
Yeah.
It was a plot of land, then discovering, much to their chagrin, that the rolling countryside waiting to be planted with waving fields of grain was not a hillside, was not meadows, it was not something that could be turned into fields. It was hills and forest,
Rock.
and rock, because it was the Ozarks, the northernmost Ozarks. And so ultimately, then realizing that grapes naturally were growing in abundance in the region, and started viticulture. They started the wineries. They started, which, responding. So it's so interesting. 1837, stepping into basically an inhospitable wilderness. 1839, the population was 450.
Wow.
And by that point was not only a steamboat port, but was, and I think this is a testimony to the industrialists, or not an industry, the industry, the personal industry and entrepreneurism of the settlers, that there was a tavern on every corner, and also boasted the largest general store between St. Louis and Kansas City.
That's great.
And in 1847, just 10 years after the founding of the town, Michael Poschel opened Herman's first commercial winery that would later become Stonehill Winery.
And I think people, some people think, oh, 450 people, that's not anything. Well, going from 17 to 450, and from building everything, ground up, that's very impressive. And no infrastructure,
No,
and
what?
hope the steamboat came by.
Yes, well, whatever you had to buy from the store, you waited for the steamboat. And by fall of 1848, I mean 11 years from nothing, Herman hosted their first wine fest, which brought tourists on steamboats from St. Louis. 11 years.
That's impressive. It really is.
It is absolutely impressive. And of course, the thing that I love about Herman, I put my notes away, but the thing that I love about Herman is so much of the early architecture and a lot of that early culture is still preserved and celebrated.
It is. It's beautiful, and it's you are stepping into a different environment, so to speak.
You really are. And I was going to say, don't get me started, but it's too late. Phenomenally good. The best of the worst. Phenomenally good bratwurst, homemade sauerkraut. There's the cuisine at Herman is phenomenal. Really, really good. A dry white wine that they make there, as well as beer, and it's such a neat place to visit. The bountiful and overflowing table, also something that we got to experience last week
Yes,
with,
yes.
with in the region. And the thing that I love, going riffing off of just German culture in the Ozarks, is that the if you know what to look for, German culture is unbelievably alive and well,
Yes.
and self-perpetuating to such a large degree. And you find it in the community halls, you find it in the beer joints, you find it in the churches, in the church basements, in the church basement suppers, you find it in the barnyards, the way the farms are structured, not just at Herman, but just the entire surrounding region.
Yeah.
Uh, but it also masquerades, not purposefully, but just, it appears, I think, to what I would classify as an untrained person. I'm going to be mean there for a moment, say untrained people, that it masquerades as just American farm culture.
Yes, and I would say, and the answer to that is yes, and yes and no. I mean, it is, because that is
Hmm.
part of American farm culture, and aspects of it you see across the country, particularly further north in the Midwest and East, but
Yes.
uh, unique as well. And so it's
Hmm.
one of those things that if you know what you're looking for, you can say yes. That's, you see the German influences. Although if you're not looking for it, um, you're probably
It
not going to see it. And just like certain academics that we were talking about.
there is some benefit to being embedded within a culture to be able to recognize differences. That's that's a simple fact. But and this will probably be we're going to go for episode 3 for our
Yep.
anniversary series. So this will probably be our last primary topic for tonight. Is a very unique experience. I'm going to fall back a little bit on that. Uh, what we were talking about earlier, where my approach to paranormal experiences tends to be, I put myself into the environment and just experience it the best I can without a lot of overthinking one way or the other, then pull myself out and just see what happens, what percolates in, what are my impressions of the location. And some places obviously push back, some
Mhm.
places pull in really odd ways. And one of those places is the wine cellar at Stonehill Winery, which dates back to the late 1830s, early 1840s.
Yes, and you told me the story, and I love this story. Um, it's pretty amazing, and it's always wonderful when you find a space like this.
It is, and for people who are like expecting a uh, three-part ghost story with a big scary climax at the end, I'll spoilers. That's not this story.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a story about a space, and a space that, and I approached it the way that I prefer to approach spaces, which is cold. I'm not going in having done a lot of research. I'm not going in having like looked up all the ghost stories of a location or sought out the haunted places or whatever. I'm just going to these spaces to enjoy the spaces, and then I see what comes out of that. I think that's, for me, that's a very on. I can't always do it because sometimes
Right.
we get invited because the place is haunted, but
Right.
I think it's a very honest, oh, almost hesitate to use this term in regards to myself, but wholesome approach to investigation, and uh, and I love it. So this is the original Stonehill Winery building, or buildings. It's a complex. It's built into this incredible hillside overlooking the Missouri River. It's just on the east edge of downtown, easy walking distance, and ends up, I go in there, and is so many cases with my places that there's something about it. It's not exactly like it's the witching hour on the 13th of the month or anything. It's middle of the
No man
afternoon.
numerology going.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think spirits pay any attention to our numerology, but that's just me. I may change
I
my
don't
mind.
either.
But I don't think they care about whatever
I don't
dates that
either.
we put on a construct of a calendar. But or if they do, they're paying attention to dates that are much older and are tied into solstices and equinoxes and moon phases than our like specific numbers. So if you're like totally freaked out about Friday the 13th, my opinion is I don't think it makes any difference, but that's just me. But
And ironically, Friday the 13th never had anything to do with ghosts anyways.
right, what is the basis of that? I read that and then my brain spit it out.
Friday the 13th was October Friday the 13th, 1307 was the day that Philip IV issued the edict to arrest all the Templars.
Yes, thank you.
And that's why it was considered a bad luck day, because he did that.
Right. Yeah. So, well, it's bad luck for the Templars.
Some of them, most of them got away.
Yes.
Some of them did not have a happy ending.
No. So going into this space, first of all, the upstairs space, it was middle of the afternoon. It was like a Friday or Saturday during October, and Herman, there were a lot of people around. That was, so it's not exactly like I'm, creeping around in a building all by myself. Lots of things happening, lots of wine being sampled, lots of cheese available for sale. Oh, cheese. Anyway, there's also amazing cheese at Herman. All of these things. And then there's these wide, beautiful stairs sort of behind the cheese counter leading into the cellar. And there's a little sign that is sort of a self-guided tour sort of thing. And there was a lot of other places in the building that I could have gone. I went downstairs. Again, just going off of general senses of things, being pulled downstairs. I wanted to go downstairs. What was downstairs? I had no idea what was downstairs. You go down and it's these cavernous spaces for the, these old wine cellars, of course, done in traditional German style. So it really does feel like the old country in that sense. Hand done and, I'm sure locally fired red brick. And there was an undeniable presence within the space. It wasn't pushing back. I honestly felt like it was rather beckoning, not in a creepy sort of way. It was a presence.
Sit down and have a cup of coffee, kind of.
That, yes, certainly a presence that seemed to love the space and to really be calling others to experience that similar energy. That would be the best way that I could put it. It felt very warm. It felt very bright. It felt very specific. It was a space that you wanted to stay in. I think that was the interesting thing for me. I could have pulled up a chair and just stayed. And this is not, it's a lovely space, but it's not a real comfortable environment. It's a cavernous wine cellar. And there's a couple of potential conclusions just based on research. Now, on the way out, after I'm like, wow, this feels good, but this feels weird. This is a very unique space in there. I feel like that very strongly that there's a presence here of something. Then on my way out, which for the record, I didn't read on my way in, was a little plaque that said, oh, by the way, the place is haunted. And I'm like, well, yeah, but yeah. I do think that it's fair to say haunted by what? Of course, our regular concept of haunting is someone died in the space.
Yeah. And that's a narrow interpretation, a narrow slice of what it can be, I think.
It is based on conversation we had on an episode last year. And so some very interesting research really spurred these connections, and maybe they are tenuous connections. I can't say. I feel very strongly that, you know, I will say very strongly, I'm leaning heavily towards these conclusions, but that also means that I want to go back and do more research. And I'm not entirely sure if I want to go back and do more research, or if I just want more German food, which is, very much a real thing.
too.
Um, but
I'll take German food as a rationalization to go research.
to do more research, 100%. But shout out to a YouTube channel that I'm a huge fan of, which is Scary Fairy Godmother YouTube
I like
channel.
it too.
I adore this YouTube channel. I have occasionally let it slip that I listen to these to go to sleep by. And usually the creepier the better. So if you're on YouTube, or you go over to YouTube, check it out, subscribe it. There's fantastic stuff on there. There is an episode that talks about European, or more specifically an English concept, folklore called a Buttry sprite.
Mhm.
And I'm not entirely convinced that the Stonehill Winery cellar is being haunted by the spirit of a dead person, if it is not being haunted by a Buttry sprite.
And for everybody, what is a Buttry sprite?
Well, it's part of the Fae. It's a very traditional concept of fairy, which is very different than the mid 20th century concept of a fairy. And it could be considered a bit of a catch-all. They seem to be associated with poltergeist activity as well, often unseen, things getting moved, hearing voices, hearing footsteps, that sort of thing. But what was really caught my attention about the Buttry sprite is that it was paranormal activity, essentially, that was being associated with the Butteries. Large cellars,
Yeah.
where your cheese and your wine and all of your foodstuffs would be stored to keep them safe. And what was particularly unique was that seemed to be the occurrence of hauntings, but in locations in which there was recognizably within the community no reason to be a haunting. No death had occurred.
Right.
It wasn't it wasn't the cemetery, it wasn't the funeral home, there were no cadavers, there were no corpses, there was no wars. It was
No
where they
trash.
stored it's where they stored all the good food. And the idea that, for whatever reason, and I do find this unique, not unique to European folklore, but certainly a major part of European folklore associated with the Fae, is that the Fae are attracted and appreciate food and drink.
Yeah, that's true.
And you often appease them with drink or with food, with offerings of sugar, cream, or porridge with lots of butter, these types of things. And so they're and you can make a connection. I think that it is fair to say that the pre-Roman folkloric culture was very heavy in terms of its understanding of what we call the Fae, the fairies. And this was magic associated with the hearth, that was associated with craftsmanship, it was associated with blacksmithing, it was associated with food and food production, and really, quite frankly, all the magical things that we really love, like cheese and butter, wine. I don't blame them. And that the thing that I like, whether you believe any of this or not, and I do, but regardless, the thing that I like is that it elevates these very simple but beautiful aspects of our lives, that it's very easy in a post-industrialized age to take for granted. Oh, I just went and bought my cheese at the store. Elevating these things to that there's effort, and there is purpose and intent and care, love, compassion,
Mhm.
that is all poured into this. And these are really the hallmarks of traditional magic.
Yeah,
Um, and so we throw around the word magic very, very easily. Oh, that was a magical experience. Oh, whatever. But that they're, regardless of whether you're talking about conjurings and hoodoo, whether you're talking about cunning folk, whatever,
mhm,
around the world, magic comes down to, this intensity of emotion and effort and focus and really craft. I mean, we call it witchcraft for a reason.
yeah,
That is the same type of thing in a pre-industrialized society that you have to put into, whether you're creating textiles, or you're creating pottery, or you're creating
true.
food, or you're wildcrafting, or you're raising livestock and
Yeah,
caring for them. There is something weirdly metaphysical, yet incredibly purposeful, yet incredibly physical about that connection. And the best postulate that I can come up with is your there's something about that effort that somehow crosses a metaphysical boundary and is attractive or capable of creating some sort of threshold in these spaces. And that seems to be where Buttery Sprites came from, or come from. And that seems to be what, well, certainly from my current perspective, based on the level of research and experience that I've had thus far, is my best conclusion in terms of the Stonehill Winery cellar.
well, and as you were talking, it made me also think, I mean, there's a big corollary to Native American lore and the little people, using, and again, offerings of food, etc. So
Yes,
again, that pre-industrial construct has similarities in the new world as
it
it did in
does.
the old world.
It does. And I think, something that we talked about a while back, we may talk about it more in depth here in a couple of weeks, but um, the essentially the confluence of English cunning folk, West African culture, animism, and more than just animism, West African religion,
Mhm.
translated predominantly through Haiti and Santo Domingo, and Native American culture
Mhm.
coming together to form what was essentially the tool belt of hoodoo.
Yeah,
Um, we're finding a lot of points of intersection in terms of their practice.
really, there really are. To be perfectly honest, in a lot of ways, more similarities than differences.
Hmm. And to me, there we as human beings having a human experience suffer through a great deal of differences, a great deal of misunderstanding, a great deal of chaos and conflict, and it happens around the world, and it happens in our own backyards. Something about digging into this and finding yet the similarities is very comforting to me.
I do too. I mean, um, I think the more you find that there's a lot more to a universal experience across time and cultures, um, to me gives that there has to be some meaning to it, or everyone wouldn't have gone through it and
Yeah,
come up with the same ideas and practices if there wasn't something to all of it.
absolutely. I and that at the end of the day, as difficult as it is sometimes to see, and as difficult as sometimes we make it, our similarities within the human experience are much greater than our differences.
Very much so. Very much so. And that might be a good spot to end on tonight.
Might not be bad. We're going to continue this off the cuff segment as we celebrate our 2-year anniversary of Dark Ozarks next week. And real quickly, we have a very important event coming up in Newtonia.
That's right. What, in 2 weeks?
Wow.
A little, well, 2 weeks Saturday, yeah. At the at the Ritchie Mansion, actually sort of a three-part event. Will be at the community center, then the mansion, and then the Civil War cemetery, and including a investigation afterwards. So everyone come out, go to the Paranormal Science Lab website, paranormalsciencelab.com for tickets, and it's going to be quite an evening.
It
Last time
is.
was a lot of fun.
What time does it start?
It starts at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to be fun. I'll be there.
Yep.
You'll be there. Lots of people are going to be there.
Yep. And it'll be a good time for all. Just avoid the snakes in the cemetery.
Absolutely. They're good snakes.
They
I'm terrified of snakes, and I approve of these snakes. So it's all good. It has the Josh Heston stamp of approval on the snakes.
There you go. So everyone have a good week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Alex. Oh, we're going to have to end.